Hello and welcome to the Book Club with me, Aidan Magee, and my guest, Rory Smith from The Times, who has just produced this. It's been on the streets for about 2 weeks. Champions League Dreams with Rafa Benitez. Rory, first of all, welcome to the show. You spent 20 hours with this man. It's a long time to spend with anybody. What's he like?
He's a nice guy, Rafa. I think the public perception of him is maybe that he's obsessive and controlling and Machiavellian, and he's interested in politics and what have you. And you've interviewed as many managers as I have. You've spent time with as many managers as I have. That's true of all of them. Absolutely every single one of them. They're controlling and obsessive. That's what they're all like. But he's also got a softer side. He's very funny. He's very kind, very generous. There's more to him than I think maybe people see.
But is that just because he's more relaxed at the moment, because he's basically looking for a job?
Possibly, but then I guess at the same time, maybe looking for a job, you'd be slightly more stressed. I'm not sure. I think I worked with him on Merseyside as well for 3 years, and I found that to be the case. That there's kind of an image of Rafa that maybe is portrayed through the media or across on the TV or what have you, and there's a different Rafa that exists away from the cameras.
So let's turn the clock back to 2004. We've got Gerard Houllier there. You'd had quite, fair success under him, but he hadn't crossed that final line of landing the Premier League trophy for the first time in, 14 years at that stage. Rafa comes in. He's won the league with Valencia a couple of times. He's won the UEFA Cup. What was the reaction on Merseyside when he got the job? Because I heard someone say to me, he just looks like a Spanish Gerard Houllier to me.
Yeah, I think there were two camps, I guess, and I think that's true for the fans and probably true for the players, that some wanted an English manager. Alan Kirbishley, it dates it now, I guess, how far back that was. But Kirbishley was kind of the leading British candidate, and then Benitez was the leading foreign one. Mourinho was another sort of possibility who'd been mentioned. I think generally he was well received, Benitez, and the way he tells it, as soon as he arrived at Anfield, the fans were really warm and welcoming towards him and his family. They helped him settle in. The players, he says, the attitude was fantastic from the first day. There was no question that I think some of them had wanted a domestic manager to come in to replace Gerard Houllier. But no, there was no sort of stinting in training. The attitude was absolutely right. The problem that first season, I guess, was probably the quality.
Well, exactly. We're going to come on to that now because, was winning the Champions League, how did it happen? It was probably the most... Well, you had players in that side who will never win a trophy again in their life, will they? They never went on to win anything, but they happen to be part of that squad. Jimmy Traore, I'm perhaps thinking of. How did it happen? That's arguably the greatest... He'll never top that, will he?
In terms of getting a squad of sort of nowhere men and journeymen and what have you, waste and strays to the Champions League, probably not, no. I think that's one of the most remarkable managerial achievements of modern times. The only one I guess you'd compare it to is Chelsea last year. That's similarly sort of seismic, but then Chelsea had a much higher quality of player. There were no Jimmy Traores in that Chelsea squad. It was a remarkable achievement. The argument that's always thrown at Benitez is that he was lucky, and there's no question that he was fortunate to an extent in Istanbul that Milan sort of collapsed psychologically in the second half. But if you go back through that run, they beat some great sides. They swatted by a Leverkusen side, and that was a decent Leverkusen team.
And let's not forget Chelsea in the semi-final, who were a powerhouse of a Premier League side that year.
And Benitez says in the book that that's one of the best teams he's ever faced, that Chelsea team, because they could hurt you in so many different ways. They had, Draper and Kesman, and Kesman obviously isn't maybe the player that we think he is now, but he was a good attacking option.
He had a big reputation.
Big reputation. Damien Duff, Robben, Lampard, obviously Terry. They could score from set pieces. That was Rafa says
so rigid defensively as well, weren't
they? He just says they were one of those perfect sides. Not that they were a perfect side, but there was nothing wrong with them. That Chelsea team, they could score goals in any different way. They scored goals from all angles, from all types. They could counter attack. They could sort of strangle you. They could do everything.
But it was he kept 2 clean sheets against them over 2 legs. Well, I think it's no mean feat.
What's really remarkable about that semi-final, and there's Juventus in the quarters as well, is that it's not just the ghost goal from Luis Garcia obviously sort of attracts attention, and that's the controversy. And Mourinho always said that Liverpool never deserved to get to the finals. They didn't score. Benitez would say that fine, it's not a goal, but you have Petr Cech sent off and a penalty to Liverpool, so it's kind of your choice. But they kept Chelsea out for 180 minutes, and that was remarkable against that Chelsea team to stop them scoring. Because that was a Chelsea team that steamrolled the Premier League. And Liverpool kept them out. And to be honest, apart from that one chance for Doug Johnson right at the end in the second leg, Chelsea never really looked like scoring. And that's not lucky, that's planning.
So what about, he takes it on a year later, He beats West Ham in the final on penalties, 2006. That kind of sets the team up for the 2007 final. By this time, domestically, they need to be getting themselves together in terms of going for the Premier League. I mean, tell us a bit about that kind of 2-3 year period. What does he do and how does he reflect on it?
Yeah, that's kind of the period when Rafa was really starting to make it his Liverpool. He was getting the players in that he wanted. He was addressing certain issues, sort of shortcomings within the squad. And yeah, 2006 in terms of the Champions League was a bad year. They went out to Benfica in the last 16. Obviously, after winning it, that was a bit of an anticlimax. But then 2007, they really kick on in Europe. They'd finished third in the Premier League with 82 points in the previous season in 2006, which was a club record at the time. They then add in sort of another host of new players. Dirk Kuyt, most notably, is there in 2006 and into 2007, and suddenly you have this next push for the Champions League final.
So you can see at this point that the gap is beginning. I mean, let's be clear, you're working on Merseyside shortly after, weren't you?
Shortly after
that
time. Yeah.
So you could see, even as a casual observer, you could see the gap closing at this point.
Well, I think what's looking back on that period in Liverpool's history now, and it feels like distant history because of everything that's happened. It's amazing to think that Liverpool in 2006, I think they finished 9 points off Chelsea, and that was again great Chelsea side. But they were 2 points behind Manchester United maybe, and then these were small gaps that they were they were level pegging with Arsenal for 2 or 3 years. United were within their sights, Chelsea were within their sights, and now you look at them and the distance is huge. But every year that until Rafa's very final season, the distance came down a little bit every year, every single year. It never quite came down enough, but it kept coming down.
What about Gillett and Hicks? I mean, they must have come in around about 05,
February 2007. They buy
February
the club.
2007. So they buy the club then. I mean, what does he say about that period? I mean, what's his initial reaction to these people coming in? Because, I mean, even people who didn't know a great deal about football could tell that they didn't know much about football.
Yeah, I mean, that's true of all foreign owners, I guess. Some maybe more so than others. But his initial reaction, and he's quite honest about it, was that they said all the right things. They sort of said that they didn't know much about the sport. They were here to learn, that they wanted to invest in the squad. And that's the thing. There's only one thing when a new owner comes into a football club, any football club, that the manager wants to hear, and that's, we will give you money for players. That's all managers are bothered about. Gillett and Hicks said that to Benitez. It turned out not to be true.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, does he feel that he wasn't, I mean, if not in the first few months, because, I mean, in the summer of 07 they bought Torres, didn't they?
Yeah.
But does he feel after that he wasn't back?
Yeah, that first summer was it was almost misleading, that they didn't just buy Torres. It's 21 million for Torres, it's 11 million for Ryan Babel, 5 million for Ben Ayoun. There's a decent amount of money going out, and they were the players that Rafa wanted. They looked like the Americans were going to really back Liverpool to really go for it. It basically changes after the first year when Gillett and Hicks try and refinance their loans. The global credit market has collapsed completely. They can't get the same rates, so they transfer the debt onto the club, and then suddenly the money disappears. And that's where the problem starts.
So how does that impact, when you say the problem, how does that impact first kind of manifest itself in terms of what Benitez is trying to do with the team?
Well, probably the most important kind of impact of the lack of transfer fund is that instead of having a squad that you're trying to add to, suddenly he's being told, if you want to add substantial, the sort of players who can make a difference in the season.
So who do you have in mind?
Well, going through the years, I think in 2009 it was Stevan Jovetic at Fiorentina. He wanted to sign Sylvain.
Well, he's been linked this summer with Manchester City.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they had him. They knew they could do a deal with him. I think it's unfair to say that they had him sewn up, but they knew there was a deal to be done with Fiorentina, and with the player couldn't do it. Before that, I think Silva is the famous one. They missed out on other players for other reasons. They missed out on Dani Alves because they had to choose between Alves, who wasn't at Barcelona at the time. He was at Sevilla, more of a risk, and Dirk Kuyt. They missed out on Simão Sabrosa, the Portugal winner, as well, through inefficiency in the way that Liverpool signed players, which is a weird kind of chronic problem at Liverpool.
Does it still exist today?
It still exists today, and given that none of the same staff are there, it's bizarre that it still exists.
And that would explain what happened at the end of the transfer window.
It does seem to be, yeah. I mean, it's not like it's a curse or anything, but it's almost like there is something in the water in Liverpool that makes it really hard for people to be efficient enough to sign players. Well,
the thing is, with Liverpool in the 70s and 80s, I mean, I remember the 80s just about, and they just used to sign. You never knew they were signing a player, but they came out. And I remember Glenn Hussein was a famous one. He was going to United for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then next thing you know, he's at Anfield with the Adidas and the candy shirt, isn't he? I mean, like, they seem to have a much better way of doing business then than it is than what they do now.
Well, Peter Robinson, who was the chief exec in the 80s, was the sort of archetype of the perfect chief executive. Very quiet, never came out and said anything, just got the job done, signed players, signed the checks, and that was how it worked. What Liverpool don't appear to have now is that the equivalent, and what they definitely didn't have when Benitez was there was someone to do that, because you had Rick Parry, who was I think Rafa's opinion of Rick Parry, I don't want to sort of betray confidences, but his opinion of Parry has changed since he stopped working with Parry. I think he admires him a lot more now than maybe he did when they
it became quite fractious.
It was fractious. It was never sort of poisonous, the relationship, but they were working to different ends, I guess, and there was a tension. I think that's probably fair to say. But now, from both sides, I think there's a respect for what the other was trying to do, and it was always a sort of healthy tension. It was two men who wanted Liverpool, the best for Liverpool, but maybe they didn't always see the same. They didn't always see what the best was as the same thing, if you see what I mean. So. Yeah, Parry was respected, but then after Parry comes Christian Purslow. Perslow's name is mud to a lot of Liverpool fans, but he was working at a very difficult time for the club, and that has to be factored in at least. So I think Benitez missed out on having that person who could help him build the squad that he wanted. So instead of adding these players that he's trying to sign, he ends up having to sell a player, to buy a player, which kind of means that you never really move forward. I think you're always kind of...
OK, we're going to leave it there for now, but we'll be back straight after this break with more from Rory Smith and Champions League dreams. Welcome back to the Book Club. I'm Aidan Magee and I'm joined by Rory Smith, at the Times, the author of this, Champions League Dreams, with Rafa Benitez. In the first half, we were just discussing about the lead-up to that 08-09 season when Liverpool almost captured the Premier League title. Tell us about that, more in depth about that season, because that was his big season. He nearly pulled it off.
That was probably it's almost a great forgotten season of Benitez's Liverpool, because obviously Istanbul and Athens kind of captured the imagination, the runs to the European Cup finals. But that, to me, that 08-09 season was one of the best Premier League title races for the last 20 years. Maybe not as dramatic as the conclusion to 2011-12 with Aguero scoring in the last minute, but you had two teams, Liverpool and United, right at their peak. I think there were 7 games, they both won 7 games in a row. Real neck and neck stuff, proper toe-to-toe. You had the refereeing controversies at Old Trafford. Liverpool eventually blew it with a 4-4 draw at home to Arsenal. There's not much more dramatic than that. And in the middle of it, you had Liverpool beating Real Madrid 4-0 at Anfield, then going to Old Trafford and beating Manchester United 4-1.
Well, of course, winning at Real Madrid as well in the Champions League.
Won at the Bernabeu. Yeah, which is, I mean, throughout Benitez's reign, and again, this seems strange to say about Liverpool given where the club is now. Throughout Benitez's reign, they won at every major ground in Europe.
Well, yeah, I mean, Chelsea was one, wasn't it? I mean, before Christmas, the first team to win there in about 4 years.
Yeah, they were. That was that season. Won 1-0. The first team to. Yeah, Chelsea hadn't lost. I think it's 86 games they'd done unbeaten.
Like that, yeah, it was incredible.
And Liverpool go and win, and then they beat Manchester United by the biggest margin for 60 or 70 years, I think.
No, because QPR, my team, we won there in January 1992, 4-1, so it was about the same. Yeah, neck and neck with that.
Yeah,
I know what you're saying.
And matching QPR, of course, is a major part of history. Not often you can say that, but it was this incredible season, and without wanting to sound like an apologist for him or sort of biased, I think how close that title race was is forgotten. It was 4 points in the end. It was influenced slightly because United had been to the World Club Championship and they had games in hand. And obviously you had the facts speech, which others refer to as a rant.
I mean, that was January, so halfway through the year. I mean, I think they not long won. It was only a couple of weeks after they won at Newcastle.
They were top. Liverpool were top.
Christmas. Why did he do that?
Well, his story, and truth is kind of a vaguely fluid concept, but the way he remembers it and what his thinking was that they'd heard at Liverpool that there were problems in United's dressing room and that United were worried about the threat posed by Liverpool. So I think Benitez's thinking was, let's see if we can turn the screw. Let's see if we can just all managers do it. Mourinho does it. Ferguson does it. Just try and influence the referee so that if there is a decision that needs to be given, that's a sort of borderline penalty, maybe he doesn't give it. That's the essence of mind games, I guess. And he tried it. And whether it worked or not is impossible.
Well, I think it's fair to say it backfired, didn't it?
I don't know if it backfired. I think the problem was that Liverpool, on the Saturday, so the press conference would have been the Friday. On the Saturday, Liverpool went to Stoke and drew 1-1. Now, I think it's fair to say, a 1-1 draw at Stoke's not a bad result.
I think it was 0-0, wasn't it?
It might have been 0-0.
Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry to be a pedant.
Yeah, well, no, you're never sorry to be a pedant. A draw at Stoke isn't a bad result. Gerrard hit the post with 4 minutes to go, which would have, I think, put Liverpool 3 or 4 points clear at the top, and it would have made it look like the speech was warranted.
Meanwhile, at Old Trafford, Ronaldo's getting fit, and they're gaining a bit of momentum.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, it didn't work. I don't know whether it backfired. Rafa quite rightly points out, and I'm inclined to agree with him on this. You can't say it backfired, because Liverpool won 11 of their last 12 games, which is a pretty good run. So it obviously didn't influence Liverpool's form, but maybe it didn't impact on United's form in the way that he wanted it to. It obviously didn't work, and it did make him this kind of laughingstock, just very briefly, that I think kind of overshadows that title race. Because Liverpool ran United really, really close that year, and as I say, beat them at Old Trafford.
Well, I think they did double over United. The difference really was the draws at home to the likes of Fulham and Hull, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was where they dropped the points. It was an early season. They only lost 2 games that season, but early in the season they had this run of games. Stoke, they drew at home with Stoke as well. They drew with Fulham, drew with Hull. They dropped these points that were all very avoidable. So Liverpool, when they sort of cranked up through the gears towards the end of the season, they were really impressive, and they were a really sort of difficult side to play against. But they'd already maybe lost. They dropped the points they couldn't afford to drop.
So at the end of the season, I mean, he's only 4 points off. Everybody knows they probably should have won the league that year. Why does he go and sell Xabi Alonso?
Well, the story with Alonso, it kind of dates back to the previous summer when Alonso had an arrangement with Juventus to go, and Liverpool wouldn't sell because Juventus wouldn't match the price. Alonso then has this incredible season. He'd maybe lost his way a little bit the previous year, Xabi Alonso. He wasn't the player in his middle 2 seasons at Liverpool that he is now at Real Madrid. He has this incredible year. He makes it clear that he still wants to go. Benitez knows that Real Madrid are looking, and they get an offer of £30 million, which Liverpool aren't in a position to turn down. So I think that he's blamed for that because a lot of Liverpool fans quite rightly love Xabi Alonso because he was this sort of sumptuous midfield player. The real mistake, and it's the man on the screen behind me, replacing him with Alberto Aquilani, who's
but also sorry to interrupt you there, but
right.
Also the transfer policy that summer, it seemed, was he wanted a new midfielder and he wanted somebody to take the burden off Torres up front, and he got Robbie Keane, a player who was in his late 20s by this point. There was no evidence really that he could play for a really, really big club. I mean we can see some of the deals down here as well. I mean, Aquilani stands out, as you said. Robbie Keane, £19 million. I mean, that's nearly £40 million gone of your budget in one fell swoop. You can't really say that the Americans didn't back him.
Well, the problem with Keane was the previous summer. Keane was 2008 into 2009, but they were still suffering from Robbie Keane because they'd had to sell him back to Spurs because he hadn't settled. So they had that money, or they thought they had that money. They spent 17.6 million, on Aquilani to replace Alonso. And the thinking there was, and it makes sense, that Alonso didn't score enough from midfield, which was true. Liverpool didn't have that midfielder contributing sort of 6 or 7 goals that United always have. Aquilani, the theory was, would score those goals. He didn't because he was injured. That was the risk that they took, that they were getting a £30 million player at half price because of the injury problems. Never recovered from the injury problems. I actually think Aquilani maybe should have been given a longer chance by Liverpool after Benitez had gone, but they decided not to, and it goes down as one of the worst deals in Premier League history. There's no way around that. The problem that Benitez had was that he wanted that summer, as well as Aquilani, to sign a central defender, either Sylvain Distin or Matthew Upson, as a sort of backup central defender rather than a first choice. And he wanted to sign Jovetic from Fiorentina. The money disappeared because he was told initially your budget is gross, excluding wages and agents' fees and commissions and things like that. And then suddenly he signs Aquilani and he's told your budget is net. Everything has to be tossed in, which means he can't afford either Jovetic or Distin or Upson.
So this is the backdrop. While all this is going on, the Americans are having problems financing the club. They've done a fairly good job in the first couple of years putting money in. The first year stops.
The first year was fine, and then, as I say, it's impossible to defend what George Gillett and Tom Hicks did to Liverpool. But it's undeniable that the problems in the global financial industry massively impacted. That was where the real world kind of intersected with football. That was definitely a factor. There's no shadow of a doubt about that. But that summer was the one where it really, really hit home that Liverpool were now working on a shoestring. They wanted to sign Jovetic, who's a £20 million rated striker, as you say, linked with City this summer. Top-class player, would have scored goals. And Distin, who experienced sort of wizened Premier League campaign.
Yeah, he's never let anybody down.
Yeah, exactly. Does a job. 5 or 6 million, I think they wanted to pay. Couldn't afford either of them. They got Sotirios Kyrgiakos for 1.2 million.
Well, I mean, Sam Allardyce told me that we knew Liverpool were in trouble when they signed him because he'd been offered everywhere else, and even clubs in mid-table in the Premier League, like Blackburn and Bolton, had said no to him.
Yeah, well, he kind of became a cult hero, Kyrgiakos, and he always tried his hardest, but then I'd try my hardest playing for a football club, and I'd not be any good either. So that was a real sign that Liverpool, of how far their stock had fallen, and it was a huge missed opportunity because that 08-09 season, they'd had United not on the ropes, but they'd gone toe-to-toe with United. The gap had basically gone. They were level. They were the two preeminent forces in the country. And Liverpool had this one summer to try and overhaul United effectively. And because partially because of Rafa's mistake in taking the risk on Aquilani, and partially because of the Americans, they could not take that, and you get his final season, where they finished 7th.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, they finished, it's 7th. They also, there was that game in Lyon, I think, in about November time, where they took the lead with a fantastic strike by Ryan Babel. They couldn't hold the lead, and it saw them knocked out of the Champions League. I mean, they haven't been back there since.
Yeah.
I mean, surely that incident alone, and the fact they finished 7th, tarnishes Rafa's legacy.
I think it's difficult to say if it tarnishes his legacy. I think it's looking back now, he had 6 seasons at Liverpool, of which in 5 he either won the Champions League or finished in the top 4. He won the FA Cup, and then he turned them into, little by little, a genuine fighting force in the Premier League. Yes, he had a poor last season by his standards, and it was one of those seasons where everything kind of unravelled. So yeah, you're right. I remember being in Lyon, and Ryan Babel saw this wonderful goal out of nowhere. When Ryan Babel shot from 30 yards, you stopped paying attention because it wasn't going in, and he scores this brilliant goal out of nowhere, and then Kyrgiakos, funny enough, switches off, and Lisandro Lopez scores, who's another player they'd looked at in previous years, and scores, and that's what suddenly they got 1 point rather than 3. I think they conceded late equalisers to Lyon at Anfield and Fiorentina. Everything kind of went wrong. But whether that should be allowed to sort of disguise what he did in the previous seasons at Liverpool, I don't know.
Okay, what about the future then? Because he still lives in Merseyside. I mean, is it fair to say that he looms large over anybody who comes in to the Liverpool hot seat now? Because including Brendan Rodgers, because he's the most recent manager to have had success there.
Yeah, Liverpool is a club that looks to its history a lot. I think what's happened with Dalglish probably precludes Benitez going back to Liverpool, but he's there for a lot of the fans. I think that he's a reminder of the good times.
So you think the fact that Dalglish went back there and failed would stop Benitez going back there in future? Because I look at it and think, could he be back there before the end of this season?
I'd be very surprised.
New owners?
It would have to go very badly for Rodgers for FSG to look to replace him. The thing with Rafa that I would say is that I do feel as though there's unfinished business there. He certainly feels that he didn't quite get the chance to finish his project at Liverpool, and I think there are fans there that look at it and think the young players who are coming through into the academy, or from the academy into the first team, are players that Benitez brought in. Sterling he signed, was one of his last signings, and from an academy that he revamped. So he has work to do at Liverpool. Personally, I think he might need to take another job to rebuild his reputation to get back to Liverpool.
So just in summary, in the book, it's been a good experience for you personally doing it. How the sales gone? And it's only 2 weeks gone, obviously. But I mean, and just quickly for the viewers, I mean, where can we? How much is it? Where can we get it?
It's available in all good bookshops. I presume it's available electronically as well. Although I'm a Luddite, so I don't understand those things. Kindles and iPads and e-books and what have you. I think it's $14.99 most places. Sales going pretty well. Make a wonderful Christmas present.
Well, listen, thanks ever so much. We appreciate it. You coming on. I wish you every success with it. And thank you for joining us as well. We'll be back with more very soon.